Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we have our popular business panel with Dave Taylor and Gene Barr. They'll join me in a moment. One of the subjects we're going to talk about, should the state legislature bail out the nuclear energy operation in the state? But first, the new CEO of the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, Zach Shamberg, joins me. We'll get to him after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, we have a lot to get to in this half hour. Sitting across from me is Zach Shamberg. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association. All right, well, let's start, first of all, the state budget. The governor and other folks are optimistic it will get done early. It doesn't look like there'll be big taxes in it, such as sales or income. The governor didn't even ask for it. But you all that are responsible for nursing homes, for the operation of the state's nursing homes, do have a concern about the budget. So let's talk about that concern.
Sure, and I appreciate it, Terry, and thank you for having me today. I want to make it very clear to you and to the viewers watching this program that this issue is personal for me, and I want to tell you why. My mom is a nurse. My aunt is a nurse. My cousin, her daughter, is a nurse. Believe it or not. It runs in the family. I was the only one who didn't go into nursing, it sounds like. We, as a family, just had to make a very difficult decision, probably the most difficult decision we've ever made. And it's a decision that thousands of Pennsylvania families have to make every year. My grandfather was diagnosed with dementia 5 years ago. We had to make the choice, because he cannot safely be cared for at home anymore, to admit him into a skilled nursing facility. And it breaks my heart. But last weekend, I spent time with him in that skilled nursing facility. And I watched the care that was provided to him, and I watched the caregivers who were assigned to him. And keep in mind, my grandfather is not the most easy guy to get along with right now.
We've all been through that.
Right. And I don't think he would mind me saying that.
I understand.
The way they treated him, like he was their own grandfather, like they had known him all their lives.
Right.
It brought tears to my eyes. And I have to tell you, before I left, I spoke to those caregivers and I said to them, I'm going back to Harrisburg. I'm going to talk to the General Assembly. I'm going to talk to Governor Tom Wolf and his administration. What do you want me to tell them? What do you need? And they used one word.
M-O-N-E-Y?
Well, support.
Support.
They needed support, just like my grandfather needed support. And you're asking about the budget?
Well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
We went through this. I mean, literally, thousands and thousands of Pennsylvanians have to make that decision for their parents and their grandparents routinely. I had to make the decision for my mother.
Sure.
I mean, and when you talk to people about it, it's ubiquitous. It's very common.
Right.
And it's not an easy decision to make.
It's not.
I mean, first of all, you got the problem of it's gut-wrenching when you realize you can't care for the person, whether they're in their own home or in your home. And you've got to make that decision about where to put them, and then you're concerned about the care that they'll get. But go ahead.
Correct. And when we talk about the state budget, that's what our seniors on Medicaid and nursing homes need, is that support. It's what caregivers need working in those nursing homes, support. And I got to tell you, it's 4 years in a row of flat funding for seniors on Medicaid and nursing homes. And for the 5th year in a row, Governor Tom Wolf proposed flat funding for seniors on Medicaid in nursing homes. I believe the state made a commitment to its population that if you run out of money, if you don't have retirement income, there is a safety net, and it's Medicaid. Doesn't sound like we're honoring that commitment to our aging population.
All right, well, let me put it this way. How optimistic are you that your appeals to the legislature and to the governor will be successful?
Well, I'll say this, and I'm going to give you a shout out here. You wrote a terrific editorial this week.
See, I didn't pay him to say this. Honestly, I didn't.
You did. You wrote a terrific editorial this week about political discourse and about Republicans and Democrats coming together and compromising. Terry, this is an issue supporting our senior population that I believe transcends party lines. It transcends party politics. This is something that every legislator in Pennsylvania and the governor should support.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I understand that you having staffing problem with nurses and other folks. In other words, finding people to work in nursing homes, that's obviously critical. We'll get to that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back. Well, I'm talking with Zach Shamberg. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association. We're talking about a number of things related to nursing homes. One of the problems, and I mean, maybe it's not a huge surprise given the economy, staffing shortages have become a serious problem for nursing homes. What's that about? How'd that happen?
And I think it's every industry and every sector across the state today. It certainly seems like it. But I can tell you, Terry, I travel the state and I talk to providers in every corner of Pennsylvania. And I ask them, what's their number one challenge right now? And in years past, it may have been the legal climate in Pennsylvania or the regulatory climate. I got to tell you, the number one challenge that nursing homes, personal care homes, and assisted living residences face today is workforce shortage. And there's a few reasons why. I mean, the work that caregivers do is demanding. It is physically and emotionally demanding. It's rewarding, but it's not easy.
But why is it all of a sudden a big challenge? Because of the things you just mentioned, or are there other factors?
And I think there's another factor. I think it's that there is not a focus in schools, in training today, to send younger Pennsylvanians to this workforce, to get them experience in nursing homes, personal care homes, and assisted living residences. I mean, we've estimated that in the next 5 years, there are going to be 1,400 LPN and 2,000 CNA. Those are nursing positions that are going to go completely unfilled because there's no workforce to take those jobs.
Wow. So there has to be an argument for why people should go into that field. I mean, obviously it's rewarding given the fact that you're helping people. It has great rewards, but it has to be challenging. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
It's got to be tough.
It takes a special kind of person to do that job. And I look in our buildings and I talk to providers and I look at the services that they provide. You have nursing care, specialized care, therapy, speech therapy, dining services. The career ladder in long-term care is really unlimited. It knows no bounds. And I would tell someone in high school today who's interested in nursing, you can go into a nursing home or a personal care home or assisted living residence, and your career could take any number of pathways.
Well, let me ask you a final question before I let you go. What are you doing about it? What's your association doing about it?
Sure. It's our association working with community organizations, with local chambers of commerce, with the state chamber of commerce, to try to think outside the box, to be innovative, and to do things that I don't think anyone has really done before. I mean, we're really leading the way. One example is we're working with the United Way of the Capital Region. And we have a program called Road to Success, which basically gives basic training, tips, and tools to younger Pennsylvanians and helps place them in a long-term care facility. And it's what we'll have to do moving forward to ensure that that workforce is here.
All right, well, look, I want to thank you for coming in, and you're going to keep us, hopefully, you'll keep us updated, because nursing homes are critically important, I think, to many people in their personal lives as well as their professional lives, and we're all dealing with people we love. I mean, it's an excruciating decision. We went through it, and as you point out, you have great experience with it. All right, coming up, we're going to do our business update. Number one question, the bailout of the nuclear industry in the state, should that happen? $500 million piece of legislation in the General Assembly. What will happen with it? We'll ask our experts after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, it's time for our business panel, and joining me, as often is the case, is Gene Barr. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, and Dave Taylor, he's sitting across from me. He's the head of the president and CEO of Pennsylvania Manufacturers. So you guys have long titles.
We do. We'll have to change that for you. I know it's difficult for you here.
All right. I'm going to start with you, Dave. There's a piece of legislation, $500 million, that would, I'll put it this way, you correct me, bail out the nuclear industry, 5 nuclear power plants, but 8 actual, how do I put this, towers, operations that produce electricity. They're in trouble. At least 2 of them.
Well, you see, this is the thing. Actually, the nuclear industry in Pennsylvania is profitable. Of those 5 facilities, only 1 is underwater, and that's 3 Mile Island. Of course, that's because they've been operating at half capacity with full overhead for 40 years. But I mean, Terry, we're really looking through the wrong end of the telescope on this issue. There's good news for Pennsylvania, and that is that competitive markets for electricity are delivering savings for Pennsylvania customers. That before we went into deregulated markets, Pennsylvania's electricity costs were about 15 to 20% above the national average. Today, they're about 5 to 8% below the national average. Those savings prove that the market is working, and in addition, that we have new capacity coming online, that over the last 2 years we've had 10 new natural gas-fired plants coming into the market. That's why PJM Interconnection could report that even if 3 Mile Island and Beaver Valley would be shut down, that there's more than enough juice in the grid.
More than enough power. Yeah, I mean, one of the questions, Gene, and it's an important one, is it's carbon free, and so you hear a lot about that, given the concern for climate and you know the obvious implications for that. But there's also, what do you do with the uranium that's there and the rods? And apparently they're going to get stored right in the facility itself. So there's sort of 2 aspects to this.
Well, there's a lot of aspects, and you're right. It is the only baseload CO2-free emission source. There's a lot that goes into this. A lot of this started in 2004 when Pennsylvania decided to put almost 20% of the market off limits to coal, nuke, and natural gas. That began it. A lot of issues at the federal and state level. But we have come out against it as well, as Dave has. The other reason that we're concerned about it is, in addition to the cost, is that once you're done with this, and you had the 50% that's going to be the mandate along with the 18, let's round it up and say 70, 30% of the market is available for other sources other than wind, solar, nuke, et cetera. So part of the major concern we have is that it shuts off new technologies. If somebody wants to bring in scalable nuclear, if somebody wants to bring in some new type of electricity generation, hydrogen fuel cells, they're competing with everybody else for 30% of Pennsylvania's market. Our concern is that you're going to preclude the next generation of technology by adopting something like this.
All right, let's go to this. The ultimate question is, that legislature going to give them the $500 million? I hear it's kind of mixed,
Well, I mean, we're going to stay on this for as long as it takes, because again, you're talking here about not just the increase in costs to existing customers of at least $500 million a year going forward, but also, as Gene said, the opportunity cost, losing out on future savings from new technology. I mean, we're talking about major manufacturers, major industrial sites having cost increases of many hundreds of thousands, if not multiple millions of dollars. This is a huge competitiveness issue.
Yeah, and we are an exporter of energy.
One of the largest.
Yeah, I was going to say. So, and that with or without nuclear, that will remain. That will remain.
It will remain. And, as Dave said, PJM has said we're okay. We can handle this, and that's our view. And we're going to look for other technologies to come in as well. Hopefully, look, nuclear is important. We don't want it to go away,
sure.
But that's it. We can't have it at any cost. Period.
Sure.
And the industry is doing well. Only 3 Mile Island is losing money, and so it just makes no sense to have the ratepayers bail out this industry, especially when the nuclear industry wanted competitive markets, lobbied for competitive markets, and that they were paid $9 billion during transition to compensate them for the value of their assets. They need to compete.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about something called Restore Pennsylvania and a severance tax, and maybe a couple of other issues along the way.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, now there's something called Restore Pennsylvania, and I think Gene Barr is going to help us understand who made the proposal and what it's all about. And there's a proposal dealing with the severance tax. That's a tax on the amount of cubic feet extracted from these fracked wells that produce natural gas. What's Restore
Correct.
PA?
The governor wants to come up with a program and has proposed a program. I believe the number is $4.5 billion in terms of a bond to go borrow to do lots of stuff around Pennsylvania. In order to pay that bond down, he's also proposing another severance tax. A little unclear at this point whether it would be on top of the impact tax, replace the impact tax, we're not sure.
Right.
If it replaces the impact tax, all that money that now goes into the communities already is gone, and all the money comes to Harrisburg, and you have to hope that you're going to get it. If it's on top of it, it makes us, I think, clearly the highest tax natural gas state by far, particularly when you combine the 9.99 corporate net income tax. Our view is, look, if these programs are good, if these projects are good, then fund them from a societal basis. If they're societal good, why are we asking one industry constantly to pay tax after tax after tax when they've created basically 2 Amazons in this Commonwealth with 100,000 jobs? Makes no sense. And in reality, we risk perhaps another turnpike problem when, as they've got to pay these dollars when they don't have the revenue. If we chase the industry out of here after borrowing $4.5 billion, we're on the hook for that money.
Yeah. Well, the obvious takeaway from this is that the legislature, the governor has asked for a severance tax in every single budget recommendation he's made to the legislature. This time, he didn't put it as part of the budget, but as Gene points out, it's part of Promise PA. The legislature has said no, 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 if I got that correct. There's no severance tax. Is anything likely to change?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, perhaps the governor has opened up the door to a different conversation about infrastructure and other broad-based public needs. And again, some of the items that he's asking for sound meritorious. The problem is that it's the attitude of treating an industry, any industry, like a beast of burden to be whipped, rather than a garden to be tended. That's just fundamentally wrong-headed. I mean, an analysis was done for the Forge the Future effort to say how much growth could Pennsylvania get from the natural gas opportunity, and the report found that we could expand our gross state product by $60 billion a year if we maximize the energy opportunity, 100,000 new permanent jobs, and ongoing another $2 to $3 billion for Harrisburg. If politicians want more money from this industry, we need to let it grow.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that certainly Governor Wolf has done is the pipelines that carry the natural gas literally out of the state and all around the world. You'll correct me if I'm wrong about that. I think we're now exporting a huge percentage of our energy. But here's the question. The governor is certainly not an enemy of the industry. I mean, he has supported
I would agree with you. He has come out in favor of infrastructure. He understands, and I think it's a wise decision. You just set aside this discussion on severance, and we're going to agree to disagree with him on that. We think it's going to chase jobs out of this Commonwealth. But he knows that we've got to build this infrastructure in order for the state to realize the types of revenues and jobs that Dave has talked about. So yeah, we agree with him, and I think he's been a positive force on building the infrastructure.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, I would just note that energy exports is actually a force to stand up the industry in the first place. It's a chicken and the egg kind of dynamic where we need to have customers to justify the production, and then as we stand up the industry, connect the infrastructure, that more will be available for Pennsylvania consumers so that we can go and then expand usage in Pennsylvania, including usage in generating electricity, which is why we need to keep competitive markets.
All right, Gene, I want to talk about another subject that's before the legislature, and it's called the minimum wage.
Yeah.
We have had $7.25 since 2009. It's the federal minimum wage. All the states around it has raised the minimum wage. The governor says $12 an hour is what he wants this summer, ultimately going to $15 an hour, to be raised 50 cents a year, if I understand it correctly. Right. And the majority leader in the Senate, Senator Jake Corman, has said he's open to a discussion. So is it possible, not $12, I think, is the legislature,
taking that off the table.
$9.75, $10, $10.25 an hour. I'd like both of you to respond.
We'll have the conversation. We're not unreasonable people. If there are ways that we're going to increase labor costs on people, then let's look at ways to limit that on the other side. Let's look at ways to target it to people who really need it. The person that needs it is not the kid, and they're not all kids, I'm not saying that, but it's not the kid working on weekends who lives in a house where the household income is $150,000. The kid doesn't need it. That kid needs the ability to learn experiences. We need to get it to the people who truly need it. We also know, based on Congressional Budget Office and Pennsylvania's Independent Fiscal Office, that the move to 10 or 12 or 15 has adverse job impacts. They found it in New York City in reality. They found it in Seattle in reality. We know that hiking the minimum wage causes job dislocation. Sure, some people get raises, but some people lose their jobs, lose hours, and some people never get the opportunity to get in the door.
Same question. Compromise, I hear it's possible. Again, we don't have to get into the exact, what it would be, but
we need the Commonwealth to lower the baseline cost of creating and keeping jobs. That's how we'll get more of those jobs. I think it's unwise for the government, especially state government, to muck about in the wage market. But again, if it depends on what the trade-offs are for other pro-growth, pro-employer steps that might go along with a wage hike.
Now, again, I'm back. We're almost out of time. Do you think a compromise is possible in the legislature?
I think there's going to be discussions whether they get to that, because I don't think they're going to be hanging around here very long this summer.
I think you're right.
I'm not sure that's going to be in the mix. It's possible we'll have those discussions. We'll see.
All right. I'm going to give you the last word. You're right. They're not going to be here in July and August.
They will not.
All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.